Good afternoon. This is the Formless Podcast, number 31. I'm Dustin, your humble host. I'm joined with Tyler, the superhuman, once again. We've got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about this week. Let's see. We were down here this morning for a black belt test. We had actually two of the three people that were testing were previous guests on our podcast. Mr. Skip was down. He finally crossed that bridge and got his black belt. He was like the first or second guest we ever had.
Yeah, Mr. Skip. Yeah, we had him, and he talked a lot about martial arts.
Yeah,
and he was really good. Yeah, he was. He was like the first or second guest
we had, and it was a pleasure to have him. He was awesome. We also had Mark testing for his black belt, and he was a guest on our podcast. And then his daughter Maddie, who haven't quite conned into getting in here just yet, but I think that's going to happen here pretty soon.
She'll be on. So.
Yeah. We may have to Shanghai her and surprise her at work or something and drag her down here. But yeah, lots of stuff happened. Talked about the Dream Crusher last week. We talked about your broken foot. I had many responses on social media telling me to tell you to get well and give you a hug and all that kind of thing. So,
excellent.
Yeah, you got some sympathies there.
I need a hug.
Yeah. I broke down. So we finished recording, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
I broke down again on the way home and then figured all that out. Got it towed home, figured all that out. Broke down a third time, and I'm going to go home after recording this one today and fix it. So it's been down for 2 weeks.
The Dream Crusher.
The Dream Crusher never fails to crush my dreams.
Actually, last night, it's similar. Last night I was driving my van that I used. It's a 2007 Chrysler Town & Country with almost 190,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
And I was driving it yesterday for some stuff, or last night, and all of a sudden I looked down and my check engine light popped on the van. And I was like, no! And I thought about you. I was like, you're Dream Crusher number 2. And I was like, 2 vans,
Yeah.
So I was like, I know it.
You know what that feels like.
I know what you're feeling. Yeah. Even though check engine light could be something small or something big, but you had to like really tear your van apart.
Yeah. Good fun there. Well, we just finished with this black belt test, and it was 2.5, 3 hours long, maybe.
We started at 11, so
it's 1:30 now.
Yeah.
So a good 2 hours.
Good 2 hours, yeah.
And we were talking about. So this is the third one that I've witnessed, and one of those three was my own, was our black belt test. And it's really kind of interesting, and I talked about this in Thursday's class, which our style of martial arts that we practice there's a detriment, but it's also a benefit. And the detriment is that it hasn't been around for 1,000 years or 100 years, or it's got about 50.
Our style,
Wu Ying Dao, yeah. Whereas traditional styles like traditional kung fu, taekwondo, Shotokan karate, all of those other styles, some of those are hundreds of years old, if not thousands of years old. Mm-hmm. And there's a process there. There's a program. There's all these other people that have done this thing over and over again, and they've really refined the thing. But it's a cookie cutter in some ways, right? Like there's a program, you don't deviate from that. This is the way it goes. You do ABC, you cross your I's, you cross your T's, dot your I's here and there, and this is the way it's done. You don't deviate from that path. And Bruce Lee was famous for breaking that mold. Mm-hmm. And we really, I hope hope this is one thing that doesn't change about our style, because it does change. We do grow and shift and things adjust. And I really hope that this is one of the things that doesn't change. Our black belt tests, the 3 that I've witnessed, like I said, have been a little bit different. Each one was a little bit different. We still had the written part. Everybody does that, irregardless. But what you go through when you're doing the physical half of the test is wildly different from one to the next. Mm-hmm. And I like that because you don't know what to expect. And you shouldn't know what to expect, in my opinion.
As a black belt, you should know what to expect, but also at the same time, it shouldn't be like, oh, now we're doing this, and now, okay, this is where I do, demonstrate that I know X, this and that, and it keeps. Pause for a second.
It keeps it fresh. It keeps it fresh. It keeps it it keeps it fresh, but it also keeps it. There's this element of uncertainty. Like, you don't really know when it's going to end, and you don't really know when it's going to, or what's next. And I think that's a good thing. I really do. Because all the tests up to this, you're only working on a certain portion or certain, element of that. And then, it's like one of many, many ingredients to this giant pie. And now, you've got the black belt test, and you may have to use all of those ingredients. You may only use 3 of those ingredients, but you're making this thing, and it's kind of up to whoever's curating the test. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, right.
And it was really cool to see that. It was really cool to see that.
It was really cool. And, the way Sensei Court ran our black belt test, we had 5 people testing. Mm-hmm. And this one today was 3 people. So in some ways it went faster. In other ways it was a little bit different. Like you said, just like each test is different. And I'm a firm believer that one should. It's like that Mike Tyson quote. Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's the same thing. Like with the black belt test. For us, for our art and for our dojo, you practice, you polish, you train, you do these things that you're preparing for the test. At the same time, you also got to be formless and prepared for anything. They did that one. I remember on our black belt test, they did that one thing where if you're the one testing, you're standing, and then you have people on either side of you, and one person on your right uses both their arms to grab your right arm, and the person on your left, you remember this, grabs your left arm with both their arms, and they're both tugging, kind of like almost like a tug of war, and they're both tugging on you, and so you've got to figure out how to get away from that. And we never, or I shouldn't say we never. That was something that we didn't, that wasn't polished or worked on as far as something to train for. And then it's thrown in your test, and it's like, oh, get out. And I like that. I love that.
We did something with like a training knife, right? And I had a panic attack during our test. Like I was like, we didn't practice this. We were sparring 3-4 nights a week sometimes in preparation for this, but then somebody's got a training knife and they're going to try and stab you with it, and you're like, you know what I mean? I kind of had this moment of panic where I didn't practice for this, So then it was like, oh crap, how do I deal? Well, you deal.
You figure it out.
And
real quickly.
Going back to Phil's test. That guy got put through the ringer, but he was the only one testing.
He was the only one.
So all the focus was on him. The other thing that was really cool about about this test today was having all 5 of us that had tested last time
that
on
was
the panel.
Really cool.
And watching that and seeing some of those guys we haven't seen for a year, you know, or 8 months for Sensei Van Klinken. We hadn't seen him for 8 months, seven or 8 months. Sensei Mitchell, we haven't seen for almost a year. So it was really cool to see those guys and see them and see how proud they were to be there too, you know.
I thought that was really cool. I didn't even really think about that until you just mentioned it right now. But yeah, everyone, all 5 of us that were at the last black belt test are now on the panel.
And Sensei Swope spoke.
Yeah, you know? Sensei Swope, yeah.
Mr. Stoic.
No, it was good. And I guess me being my first black belt panel, then I'm sitting there and I can't do anything because I've still got this, I'm healing on my leg. And so I'm just sitting and but it's a different type of training, which is really cool because like now with my leg being hurt, but on the mend as it is, I get to, it's not so much of my focus isn't so much on me as myself, like, oh, am I kicking right? Is my technique right? I'm looking at everyone else now, and I get to fully, like, instead of turn inside and look at myself, it's now like I'm exclusively looking outside myself, almost exclusively at everyone else and how everyone else is doing it. It's given me a different type of insight. And so then to see those 3 people that test today and to be able to see like, oh man, this person's really good at this. Oh, this person's really good at this. You know, that was really cool. And then to see you guys, you get up there and spar with each of the people. I think you sparred with everyone.
Yes, I did.
At some point.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah, that was an experience to be on the other side of that the other side of that fence, you know?
Yeah, totally.
I remember somebody on our test, somebody came up to me and was like, look, I'm not going to try and beat you. You're here to show what you can do. So like, don't go crazy on me kind of thing, you know? And I was like, well, I'm not planning on it. I don't remember who told me that, but I remember that I flashed back on that point before the test got started, when they walked in and you could see the nervous energy, you know, and the excitement. And I remember thinking like, okay, that's what this person was talking about. Like, hey, you're here to demonstrate what you know. You're not here to like kill all these people that are helping you, right? Yeah. And on the same token, like,
they're helping.
I'm not trying to beat the person that's testing. I'm just trying to give them a good partner so they're able to show what they know. You know, it's not a like, oh, well, if I beat you, you're not going to pass kind of thing, or you're only going to pass if you can dominate this, you know. It's I want to make it a challenge. I'm going to give you my best effort to show what you can do. You know, does that make sense?
Absolutely.
You know, like I just want to be a good partner. And I remember it was weird. It was a weird feeling because I flashed back on this, and I think it might have been Mark. I can't remember exactly who said that, but they kind of pulled me aside and they're like, look, I'm not trying to kill you here tonight. Like, when you test, I want to be a good partner for you. So if I go too hard or go not enough, let me know, you know, that kind of thing. And I don't think that there was an issue ever, but it was kind of a moment where I was like, okay,
kind of like
I can
breathe.
Yeah. Some of that tension was off a little bit because you're just freaking out. You know, there's a whole bunch of people here. You got your families here. You got other people's families are here watching them, and there's pressure. There's definitely pressure, and there's a formal part of it, but there's also this pressure of like, can I actually show all of this stuff? Can I demonstrate the qualities of a professional and keep calm and not, you know, if things don't work out, can I adjust to that? Mm-hmm. You know? So
It's like real life.
Definitely. It was kind of like going for like a big job interview.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever gone to an interview where you sat on a panel where there was like a panel of people asking you questions?
I'm sure I have.
Yeah,
I have.
You're
Absolutely.
just like, where's the next shot coming from?
Yeah.
And then like I've
got your guard up.
Yeah. I've been on a panel before where like I knew one person, and so like I was kind of safe there. Like, okay, that person's not going to throw me softballs, but they're not going to like try and make me look like a jackass, you know. And I've had other people that I knew were like I've had issues with, and I'm like, that's the one I've got to be nervous about because I don't know what's coming out of their mouth, you know. But I've also been on one panel where like I didn't know anybody, so I didn't know what to expect. And there was only 3 of them. It was for this job interview that I ultimately got but couldn't take it. And it was wild. It was wild because like I knew what the job entailed. I knew the details of what I was going to be required to do. But because I had no familiarity with anyone in the room, I didn't know what to expect. And it was wild. Like you at least in my experience, you kind of have to figure out what people are about real fast, and like you could tell when somebody's really down to when somebody's by the book.
Yes,
you know, they're like kind of they're asking you questions about the organization or the details, and they're very formality driven. Like, okay, you know, this is it's almost like they reading from a script or something, and then you have the other people that are like, this is kind of a hassle, or this is, I really don't want to not be here, but like I'm here because I have to be, and like I think this, you know, like you can get a feel for that kind of person really quickly, at least in my opinion. They're like, oh, I'm going to give the job to this guy, or I'm not going to give the job to this guy based off of their demeanor, you know?
Like, have they already decided?
Yeah, they already decided. Like, they decided when that first guy walked in the room whether or not they were going to give that guy the job, you know? Just based off of, like, their body language, you know?
Well, isn't that interesting? Because that is such a thing. That is such a thing in life that... And man, I mean, we talk about on the Formless Podcast, we talk about being formless. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've got to get a reading on somebody as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And what you think, and some people may debate whether if you can get a reading on someone that's judging them right off the bat, and I would that would be a conversation for something else.
Yeah.
But you definitely have to get a reading on someone for sure. Like,
absolutely. You're doing an interview or you're having a confrontation. You know, it's funny. Yesterday, I was driving home from work, and for whatever reason, I get off at like 4 o'clock. So I beat that 5 o'clock rush to get home. But for whatever reason yesterday, there were cars everywhere. And I think it has to do with like Thanksgiving's right around the corner and whatnot. So I'm driving, and I hadn't switched lanes for half mile. I've been in my lane, just driving, didn't cut anybody off. This motorcycle comes up by me, and he like is lane splitting, right? You know, where you're going in between the two cars, which you can do.
That's
legally.
legal.
It's totally legal. It's no big deal. I heard him before I saw him. He's
dangerous, but legal.
Yeah. I heard him before I saw him.
Yeah.
He's riding a Harley, and he's got loud pipes, and I'm a fan. I like that sort of stuff. But I heard him before I saw him. Well, he pulls up alongside me, and I'm going a little above the speed limit. Nothing crazy, but I want to get home. He pulls up alongside me, and he's like waving at me frantically. And I'm like, what the heck? So I look over at him, and he flips me the bird.
Out of the blue.
Out of the blue. And I'm like, I just took my hands off the wheel and I just kind of shrugged my shoulders like, I don't know what I did to you, buddy. Like, what the heck, you know? And then he takes the next turn lane and like takes off. I thought he was going to follow me home. He looked like he was really ticked off. But I got a reading from him right away. Like, I knew that dude was pissed off at me for something, and I have no idea. And the only thing I could think of is maybe something flew out of the back of my truck and maybe hit his motorcycle, or he had to swerve or something. But I hadn't changed lanes, so I didn't cut him off. Unless I cut him off like pulling out of work like 6-7 miles ago, you know. But I don't think I did, because I didn't see him. I didn't hear any motorcycles. And you could hear this one. This thing had loud pipes, man. But weird stuff like that. You know, I instantly knew what that guy's issue was.
You got to read away. You know. And you can then, as soon as you get a reading on someone, you can kind of make a decision on what to do.
Yeah.
Because then you're not just like, wait, is this person mad? Is this person upset? Like, you're like, nope, this person's mad. Okay, now.
And maybe he thought I was somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, I have a very common vehicle that I drive right now. Not the Dream Crusher, my truck. I mean, there's a million Chevrolet trucks on the road, you know. So, you know, maybe it was a mistaken identity thing, or maybe I really did tick him off, or who knows? You know, who knows? Maybe it was someone I knew. He had a helmet on that I couldn't see his face. It was a full face helmet, and the shield for the face was really dark. So I have no idea who it was, but you know, weird things like that happen.
Yeah. Well, and you said something that was so interesting a minute ago. You said regarding the black belt test. And
yeah.
So some of these other arts, what's interesting about them, and you read about it, if you read martial arts books and people who have written about their art, is that some arts, when they have, like, say, a kata, right? They have a kata. Whereas in our art, you make up your own kata for green belt and for black belt.
Yeah.
You make up your own kata with the minimum.
Which is the only two. That's it. Those are the only two katas that we do.
The only two. And you could make up your kata for green belt, and you can then reuse that for your black belt, or you can make up a whole new one for black belt. But whatever. But I read in this book one time, somebody was saying that, you know, with these katas in regard to a certain art, somebody at some point in the history of that art sat down and made that kata. Somebody made that kata, and then for whatever reason, it was, you know, so and so, they put their seal on it, like, boom, this is the kata
for this,
and this is how this goes. And then you see a lot of these people, I've seen it, what it seems like people in other arts, and they're each doing the same kata. They're each performing the same kata, like at tournaments.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing to me is that each person doing the same kata, it's like somebody throwing a roundhouse kick or a round kick. Right? We all throw it differently, but it's the same kick. Like, it's so interesting to see that.
Yeah.
Kata, it's the same thing, whereas
there's a little bit of individuality there.
Individuality and character to each kata. And it's just interesting how that is. I don't say that as a positive or a negative. I just say that that's what it is that somebody put their stamp of approval on a kata, and then that specific kata with each move integrated within it has then passed down through the generations. Yeah. And again, not saying it's a good or a bad thing. It's just it is what it is, and it's interesting to see that, and how our art is all about you creating your own, and you know, somebody's character and personality coming out of it. And a pre-scripted kata, you would see somebody's personality and character come out as well. But that's just always interesting, like we were talking earlier about other arts.
Well, and the other thing too, though, is like everything's, yes, there is an individual flavor that comes out there, but you know what it's supposed to be.
You know what it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of know from that, like you get this, it's like classical music, right? Classical music, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, those pieces of music are historic, right?
Yeah.
And they have to be played a certain way. Now, you're allowed for like a little bit of leeway.
Like
I'm sure, but like if you deviate too far, there's a line to cross, right? And you can't cross that line because then it doesn't become that famous piece of music. And I think formal katas, whether it's Taekwondo or Kempo or Shotokan or whatever you whatever you want to say, those are, there's a line somewhere, and there's no hard fast rule there, but there's definitely a line somewhere where you better not cross it, right?
Don't deviate. Don't put too much of yourself.
Okay, yeah, you got to add just the right amount, but not too much.
Yeah,
and so that's an interesting concept, an interesting thought, I guess.
Katas it is. It's super interesting. Katas, I am a fan of.
Oh,
katas.
really?
Yeah.
See, I think they're boring.
Well, I would agree with that too. But they have their place. They have their place in...
I'm sure they do. And
just not a fan.
I'm just not a fan.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard a lot of arguments for them. I'm
with you. I totally agree. I totally agree. I'm not a super fan either. I realize though they have their place in your training, and the best thing about them is that, in my opinion, is that you at least with our katas, you can make up your own, and anyone in any art could make up their own kata. Anyone can. But it's a really great way of doing solo training. It's a really great way if you don't have a partner to work with. For sure. That's no argument here. And here on the test... Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
And here on the test, when these three people did their kata, I thought they all looked great.
They did, and they were all wildly different.
Wildly different.
If I had to sit there and watch three of the exact same katas, forget that crap. And thankfully, they were pretty quick. Like, it was like bang, 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 done. Okay, now on to the next thing. Let's go. Yeah. That's cool. I was talking with Quinn. He was our guest a while back. He's my neighbor. Jiu-jitsu guy. Yeah, and recently he had tested for some belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I was asking him about it, and he was like, well, I didn't even know I was going to test. And I thought this was really, really cool. So they do it based off of merit, like how long you've been there, how often you train, how, like they kind of get together, a group of them, and are like, yeah, Fred's ready to test. Like, let's put him through the paces tonight. And then, so Quinn was telling me, basically, they just had... He was rolling. They were rolling in class, and the instructor's watching Quinn roll. And from my understanding, they just like called people in one after another. Roll with Quinn. Go roll with Quinn. And like no breaks, you're just we're gonna run you through the gauntlet and see what happens, right?
Wow.
And at the end of class, they're like, okay, Quinn, stand up, take your belt off. Here's your new belt. They have this presentation for him. But I thought it was really cool. Like, in a way, because here it's based off of how long you've been going to class, how often, and like there's a certain amount of time between each belt that you have to wait before you're off, till you're ready.
Somebody determined that.
Somebody
sat down.
Which I have no qualms with.
Nope.
I think that's great.
Somebody has to determine it.
Yeah, but the cool thing there was like you don't get to help that determination.
That is cool.
You know,
it's like a total other opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah, which was
not better or not worse. It's just different.
Exactly, and I kind of like that. Because I don't personally, I'm not a goal chaser in that aspect. Like, I think that I think you should test yourself, and I think you should. All of those things are good. But I don't think you should focus on the test. Like, I think that you will get there when you're ready, right? And like, because you should know those things, all of those concepts, all of those techniques, you should be able to do them without thinking. They should just happen automatically, just like breathing or seeing or smelling. You know, those things, you want to be able to do those things effortlessly. And I think that would be kind of a cool way to test if you can do those things. You know, without like, okay, hey, on Friday we're going to test you, Tyler.
Yeah.
No. Like, you're not knowing. You're just going to roll into class one day and they're going to pull you aside and like, okay, hey, let's see what you can do here. You know, and I don't know. It was just kind of a cool concept that I hadn't really applied to training before. You know, and
I've heard multiple people who do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as well as other one dojo I trained at, like 10 years ago, down in the Bay Area. They did something similar where you just show up to class and they would just spring a test on you, or they'd be like, oh, well, we were actually testing you last week.
And you had
Here's
no
your
idea.
belt.
Yeah. and that's cool too.
That's cool.
It takes some of the pressure off, I think. You know, because some people get test anxiety, and
which means that's something you got to work on.
Absolutely, no doubt. But it kind of, you know, some people like you just train or practice for the test,
right, and then as soon as the test is over, you don't
like, memory don't need this anymore. I passed the test, and I had that attitude for a little bit.
Really?
I've talked about this before, but like when we got to purple belt or advanced purple belt and we were doing all of these spin technique things, and I hated that stuff because I didn't understand it. And I was just like, you know what? Forget this crap. Literally, I was like, forget this crap. I'm just going to practice this stuff, take the test, pass it, and never use it again. I was completely wrong, obviously. That's not the case. It's not stuff that you use all the time, but it is something to have and use. And you actually showed me that. You had gone to a tournament back then and like had actually placed in the tournament by using some of those techniques. A
spin, yeah. I have a video from that, yeah.
And I was like, oh. Okay, now I get this. I understand why and how. I have a real hard time going along with something if I don't know what it's for.
The why.
The why. the what. The what. The where. The why. The how. I have to. I can't just follow something blindly. I have to understand, and it's a detriment to myself because if I don't get it, I'm not going to hang on to it. Like, if I don't understand those things, I can't follow along. I can't hang on to it. I will not remember it. And I don't know. There's some wire cross there in my brain that just is like, this isn't important. You don't need it. Don't get it. And it has to do with an understanding of the thing, of whatever that thing is. And so that was a big lesson for me to learn. Like, you know, sometimes you don't understand it, and that's okay. You still may need this.
Yeah.
So hang on to it, you know.
That is an important concept, is that we sometimes want to know the why or the understand, and a lot of times we don't understand the why. But what you have to do is you have to accept and say, well, I don't understand this. I don't know why we're doing this, but I'm going to do it anyways.
Yes.
And just get past the fact that I don't understand that, because that's like that. You're getting stuck on one point. Like, for example, when I was a kid or in junior high, I was never good at math. I'm still not good at math. It's a challenge. I've got to work at it when I do it. They'd be explaining a step on division, right? The teacher would be explaining a step on division. Let's just say step 3, I didn't understand. Well, he keeps moving, and he's now on step 7. I'm still stuck on step 3.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I don't know, how did he get to there? And then you're missing all this stuff from step 3 to step 7.
And like maybe 4 and 5 would explain number 3 a little bit, would make it more clear.
Possibly, yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
If you just followed along.
If you just follow along,
yeah.
But you got so stuck on, or I would get so stuck on step 3 that I didn't listen to step 4 or step 5 or step 6.
Yeah.
And you're like, but wait, why is this like that? And it's like, they're like, well, we've moved on, or you should have asked the question, or maybe you need to get with it later. And sometimes it's just like, you just have to acknowledge, I don't get this, drop it, and then move on, and you'll revisit it later.
Yeah.
And I see that with people all the time in everything. It doesn't even matter, martial arts, math, whatever. Conversation, people sometimes will get stuck on something you said, for good or for bad, that you said 2 minutes ago, and they're just like,
the wheels are spinning.
And they're spinning, trying to go back to that, and it's like, okay, just move on. We can come back. But
yeah. And in the right mind, I think if you're patient and like take a step back, detach a little bit, and are like, okay, I didn't get this, but let me maybe the next couple of things here will make this picture a little more clear.
Yes.
Like I can bring it back into focus. And if not, well, I'll go back, but let me see if I can gather a little bit more and make this a little bit more clear, you know. Life's wild that way, though. Life is wild. It's
wild, way. And that is something I've been thinking about. Just like sometimes we get stuck on those things, and then we miss everything in between. Because and it's just really important to. And I will do that daily, like on daily stuff. I'll be like. And it's almost like no big deal for me right now, because if I don't get something, like say my boss or my employer or whatever, a teacher is telling me this, okay, you got to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I don't get 2. Well, I'm just like, okay, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I don't get it, but move on. Let's stay current, you know. And I think that's a real valuable skill to have. Valuable.
I could agree with that. Yeah.
So,
it's wild if you
let things go.
Well, let things go
temporarily, or whatever.
But like, don't get hung up on the.
Don't get hung
up on that. Yeah. You know, because it almost brings you a little more trouble.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and that's the same thing. It brings you more trouble, because if you're out on the mat, and I was just talking with somebody that helped out with this test that we were on, and the person not testing, so one of the ukes. And that individual took a really hard hit in the face from one of the other people that was actually testing.
Yeah.
And the person who took the hit, he just took a step back, and he said, oh, I'm just going to let it go, in his mind. And he told me after the test, I'm just going to let it go and move on. But if he would have got stuck on that, I got hit.
I got to get him back.
I got to get him back. Like, and he came up afterwards, and he said, yeah, I got hit in the face, and I shrugged it off. I just took a deep breath, and I moved on. Yeah. And I thought that was really cool. So that's an exact example of what we're talking about.
That's big. Because he wasn't under the pressure.
He wasn't the one under the pressure.
And who knows, maybe the guy that he was sparring with that was testing was feeling that pressure, you know? Right?
This guy was really coming after me, so I actually had to really...
Yeah. Or, you know, there's nerves. There's nerves. There's anxiety. There's exhaustion. You got you know, there's 35, 40 people here watching you, and you are the center of attention right now. You know, I remember with Phil when he tested. You know, it started out pretty light and pretty easy, and as the day wore on, it was getting intense from Phil because he was getting tired. He was sparring over and over again, and like no breaks. At one point, he had a trash can nearby so he could vomit if he needed to, and he was getting to the point where like some of those hits were coming out
wild,
a little hard, you know. And Phil's a super nice guy, and this is not a detriment to him.
No.
I love Phil, but like you could tell that like he was, that control that would have normally been there wasn't there because of the exhaustion, because of the anxiety, or the all the focus was on him. You know, if you ever, you know, you've read a book, you've studied, you've concentrated, that pressure that you have, you can only maintain that level of concentration for so long before it breaks. Mm-hmm. And you don't go down a step or down to normal. You drop below that, you know, normally, and have to kind of get back to normal. Mm-hmm. You know, under stress, weird things happen to people, and like you could see, like now I could see that. But I remember at some point during Phil's test where there were a couple of us that were sparring with him, and we were like, "Hey, watch out! Make sure you know, make sure you watch your face, because you might catch one here." And it wasn't like, oh, we were complaining about Phil. It was just like, you know, be careful, because
he's swinging for the fences.
He's getting tired. He's getting tired. And you know, if you ever driven tired, you know, I know a guy that got pulled over one time. He was a truck driver, and he had been on the road for a long time. He was tired. He got pulled over because the officer thought he was drunk, and you know, field sobriety tested him, and he's like, I don't drink, I'm tired. And he's like, well, I got to test you, make sure that I can feel, you know. And then actually after he realized he wasn't a drunk driver, he you know, was like, you need to stop. You need to, you know, rest for, you know, just take a nap for an hour or whatever, you know, take a break and then go back to it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of that was kind of a very similar thing
with Phil,
with the guys here today, with us. You know, you get a little tired. You don't have the control where you may have, you know, where normally you would pull your punch so you don't hurt anybody inadvertently, or your kick, or whatever. You know, some of that stuff starts to slip out the window the higher intensity level becomes. You know?
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good test.
It was awesome. I'm glad that I'm honored to be a part of it. That was really, really cool. And I want to be at the next one.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it was so interesting, like having gone to a black belt test for Phil, and then we did our own test, and now we're now on the panel. It's the one test we weren't black belts.
Yeah.
The test was then our second test that we went to was for the black belts, was our black belt test. And now we're on the panel, and it's really cool to see, for lack of a better word, see the evolution of where we've come.
Absolutely.
You know?
And it's grown, and like I see how like it plays to people's strengths a little bit and to their weaknesses. You know, watching my son Hunter get to be an Uki was really cool.
That is really cool.
And seeing his growth and his him coming out of his shell a little bit, seeing all three of the guys that were testing and gals, excuse me, seeing their progress and growth and where they are and where they'll be in a year from now. that's awesome.
That is awesome.
That's awesome.
And that's like, Sensei had us say at the end of their test, our couple of words that we were supposed to say to them.
Yeah.
Or like a little speech. And one thing that I said was, your black belt it's not a beginning, it's an ending.
Yeah.
It's not a beginning, it's not an ending, it's a beginning.
Yeah.
And it brings you back full circle. It kind of like returns you, even today, like for me, now sitting on the panel, it returns me back, and I'm looking at them testing and thinking, oh, I was there a year ago.
Yeah.
It brings you full circle.
Yeah, and just freaking awesome. It was just awesome. Really cool. We're going to cut this one a little bit short. We're at 45 minutes, I guess. We're not, maybe not quite 45 minutes. But hey, thank you for listening. Thank you for following along. All those words of encouragement, all of those comments and questions that I get on social media is just awesome. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you have questions for us or want to be on our show or want us to be on your show, you can email us at theformlesspod@gmail.com. We're on Twitter at formless_the. Sorry, I was going to say something else, but I realized I hadn't talked to you about it yet, so I decided I'd wait until I talked to you first. And we're on Instagram at the Formless Podcast. I post there every single day. Follow along. It's kind of fun. We have a Facebook group called the Formless Podcast. It's an open group. You're welcome to join and see what we're up to. That's kind of in its infancy still. We haven't really, we post about once a week there, but we're all there. Anyway, also we've got a little bit of new technology today. We got some new mics and we're testing those out. So you may hear a little bit of improvement. Let us know what you think. And
we sound better.
We sound better, or maybe, hopefully. Anyway, I think that's it for today. We'll catch you on the next one, and keep those questions, comments, concerns coming.